Would you want to work with a therapist who comes from a corporate background? That would be me. Hi, I'm Dr. Jan Anderson. I'm a psychologist, and I didn't get to therapy in the traditional way. I actually started out in the business world out of necessity. I graduated into a recession, 0 job prospects, so I took an entry-level position in a big company. And looking back, it's the very best thing that could ever have happened to me, and here's why. Being in the business world grounded me. It made me practical and results-oriented. And here's the funniest part. I actually learned more about human nature working in the business world than I ever did getting my psychology degree. And it certainly has shaped the way that I approach therapy, especially when it comes to resilience, which is one of my specialties. Here's what I mean. In the corporate world, I got to observe how high achievers navigate things like serious career challenges, relationship difficulties, personal roadblocks, and all in this environment where the pressure to perform is relentless. So I went looking for ways to manage stress pretty early on in my corporate career. And one of the things that I discovered was a yoga class. And I did that before yoga was trendy. In fact, I was very careful to not talk about it at work because it still would have been considered weird. Didn't talk much about it at work because my colleagues were very busy doing things like pursuing their MBAs, climbing the corporate ladder. They didn't want to hear about something like that. I was ambitious too. I wanted to excel, but I trusted my intuition, and I ended up enrolling in a graduate program in counseling psychology. I'd say the best thing that I learned from my corporate experience in terms of resilience is the clear understanding that resilience is not something you're born with, it's something that you build. And here's a good example. When it came time for my internship, there really wasn't anywhere to put me in the social services agencies, so I ended up at an executive outplacement firm working with executives and professionals who had just lost their jobs, downsized, outplaced, whatever. And in that process, I really saw resilience in action. What I was doing was helping those people get a grip, dust themselves off, and put themselves back out there. At a time when they probably felt the worst about themselves, my job was to help them present really well. And here's what was great about it. In the process of just doing practical basic things, like learning how to network, how to describe what happened to you and what you wanted to do in your next career move, being able to develop a resume that's going to get you an interview, being able to interview in such a way you make it to the next interview, and eventually get to make a good decision about your next career move. If there wasn't resilience in action, I don't know what was. Here's the really interesting part. Right as I was finishing up that internship, the stock market crashed. And guess what? My job was eliminated. I had to immediately apply everything that I was learning and doing with those professionals. I had to apply it to myself. Here's the good news. I actually got a better paying job, more opportunities, and I even got a big promotion right after having a baby. I developed a new product that got a special bonus from the board of directors. So things were going really well. At the same time, the pressure to perform never let up. So as I continued to understand that the expectations would continue to be sky high, I added a meditation practice to my routine, and it was not easy. I found it very challenging, but I'm glad I stuck with it because it did help, and boy, did it come in handy. Because guess what? another economic downturn, and this time I was told that my job would be changing to 70% travel nationwide. I had a 5-year-old. Have you ever tried to explain something like that to a 5-year-old, that you're going to be gone 70% of the time? You know what I did? What I did instead is I just jumped off a cliff. Instead of taking the assignment, I took a severance package. I got my license to do counseling, and I started building what would eventually become LifeWise by Dr. Jan. Fortunately, I had no idea what I was doing, what I was getting into, because I was trying to start a counseling practice with no name recognition, no contacts, and I didn't accept insurance. And on top of that, here's the worst part of all, I was incorporating in mindfulness practices. This was a time when not only was mindfulness not a buzzword, the word didn't even exist yet. And I was incorporating those kinds of mindfulness-based practices into what I was doing. So in my spare time, I had a lot of it at first, I started doing volunteer grief counseling for a local hospice. And I was fortunate. It was a very progressive hospice, and they asked me to incorporate into the grief program some of the mindfulness-based practices I was doing. So I did, and it was a popular program. And I loved doing it. I did it for 15 years, and it actually won a national award for our local hospice. It was during that time that I decided, well, I embarked on my 7-year journey of my doctoral thesis, focusing on resilience. I wanted to make it really practical. I wanted to research ways that everyday people, like you and me, when we encounter serious challenges in life, how do we manage to get a grip, get back up, and go on, move forward? That was my focus. And probably the most important thing that I learned from all that research is that resilience is not a one-size-fits-all thing. I ended up researching 5 evidence-based ways that everyday people find ways to recover when you've been knocked down. It was during this time that I made a huge business mistake. I moved into office space before my landlords had done everything they'd promised. So I moved out, but it was tough. It was very stressful, and I had temporarily moved my practice into my home during that time. One of the challenges of that time is one of the major corporations in town that I had hoped I would be able to do business with told me that we will never refer to a therapist who has their practice in their home. That triggered a shame attack. And as I was struggling with that, well, I struggled with that for a while until one day it occurred to me, Jan, this is the perfect place to have your practice. It's in a nice neighborhood, it's a nice home, it's easy to get to from anywhere in town. There's no sign out front, there's no waiting room. You don't book people back to back. It's total privacy. It's exactly what your clients are looking for. So once I realized that, I immediately called my marketing people and said, I want to change my whole focus. I was able to, and this was a wonderful thing, to be able to flip that shame attack into actually a savvy new marketing strategy. I wanted to promote everything that I had been told I should feel bad about. So here's the best part about that. When I changed my marketing strategy and my attitude, I started booking more clients, even some from the very company that had dumped me. One of the reasons I wanted to share my story is that through these personal and professional challenges that I've had to deal with and develop resilience in getting through, I've learned some things. that have been helpful to me and that I can pass along to my clients. Here's how I would describe it. One of the things I've learned about resilience is it doesn't mean you're strong and unbreakable. What it actually means is you're adaptable when life doesn't go as planned. Another thing I learned is that resilience does not mean pushing through at all costs, which would be an easy thing to do coming from a high driving corporate background like I did. But to understand it's not pushing through at all costs, it's actually learning when to persevere and when to pivot. That's been huge. And this may sound really strange coming from a therapist, but it actually doesn't mean you need to start with your past. It is absolutely okay to start with where you are right now. And one of the most important things I've learned is resilience is personal. As I was referring to earlier, there are many ways to go about being resilient. In spite of all my mindfulness background, one of the things I've learned, and this is research based, mindfulness doesn't work well for everybody. So those practices, if they're appealing to you and they work for you, great. But I am very aware that there are other ways that work better for some people. Maybe it's solution-focused problem solving. Maybe it's pulling on things from my corporate background, strategic thinking, negotiating skills. Those are things that are just as valid. I'm also very impressed with the neuroscience-based strategies that we're seeing now and how plastic our brains are and that rewiring thing that we can do. So my job is to figure out what appeals to you and tailor it in a way that you want to work with it. You'll do it. You'll be motivated. And how about resilience as a safeguard against burnout? Here's what I mean by that. I love what I do, and I don't want to burn out. One of the ways that I've accomplished that is I really do understand and allow that I can't be all things to all people. I know that I work best with high achievers, people that are driven, they are results-oriented, they want practical solutions, those kinds of executives and professionals. That's been no surprise to me in my journey. But there have been some really big surprises to me along the way. And it's the number, here's an example, the number of couples that I'm working with that are executives and professionals. They're looking for practical, results-oriented strategies too, but yet it's a different population to work with. They're different dynamics, and it's very interesting and fun and rewarding, and that keeps me resilient. A huge surprise to me in this journey is the number of physicians that I've attracted as clients. I started writing for a magazine for physicians called MD Update Magazine with the intention that I needed name recognition, and I was hoping for referrals. And I did get that, but to my surprise and delight, I've attracted a number of physicians as clients, including several couples who, just like executives and professionals, are looking for practical strategies that work to manage stress and be more resilient, whether it's at home or at work. By far, the biggest surprise to me in this journey is how much my practice has expanded to include the growing number of parents who are estranged from an adult child. I happened to be writing about this topic just before it got really big, went viral, so to speak, and to my surprise, I've attracted a national following for my resilient-oriented approach to estrangement. And it's one of the reasons I want my first book, coming out in 2025, to be focused on that very challenging and painful topic, because I want to reach as many people as possible in a way that's affordable and accessible. Here's the thing. Resilience is not just for the rare few who are naturally tough. Trust me, I know that from personal experience. Resilience is a skill and it can be learned. Yes, you need the right tools, you need support, you need the mindset, but it is a skill that can be learned. If you want to move forward in a way that's evidence-based, solution-focused, results-oriented, I would love to talk with you. If you would love to talk with me, here's how to book a consultation.